Today I'm covering the spread or dribble drive offense, and the first thing I'm going to cover is the 4 keys. Number 1 is attacking the rack, and that's every single time you catch the ball, looking to score, looking to drive all the way to the ring and shoot either a layup or get fouled and shoot some free throws. So that's the first key. Attack the ring, get layups, get free throws. Second key is spacing. Spacing meaning getting away from your teammates. Front and forward together here, that's not good spacing. So staying away from your teammates and then being on the NBA 3-point line. The 1 and the 4 at the top, probably going to be even further than that. 1 or 2 steps behind that line. Just got to keep in mind, if 2 and 1 were both, say, 1 step off where they were supposed to be in terms of spacing, you, in theory, have made the defense 2 steps quicker in terms of getting out there to contest a shot. So, really important that we stay as wide and as far apart as we possibly can. Another thing with spacing, you go inside the 3-point line, you need to get back out there as quickly as you possibly can outside the 3. You can't have people in there clogging it up. So if you drive it, maybe 1 drove it, kicked it to 3, he needs to sprint outside the 3-point line. So at all times we've got 4 guys outside the line and just the 5-man in there. Another thing about spacing is opening up gaps. So if one's got the ball here, from 1 to 4 right now, that's a single gap. From 4 to 2, that's a single gap. From 1 to 2 here, that's a double gap, because you've got to the wing is 1, and then to the corner is 2, so that's a double gap. If 4 was to cut through here, 2 was to lift up, we've now got a triple gap between 1 and 3. 1, 2, 3 gaps. And that's what we want all the time. We want to try and get lots of triple gaps, because obviously they're going to be the easiest to drive the ball and get into the paint. Third key is moving the ball quickly. Every time you catch the ball, within 1 or 2 seconds you want to shoot it, pass it, or drive it. Within 1 or 2 seconds. You're going to have the defense closing out, you're going to have the defense off the ball shifting their position, you're going to be most open when you first catch it. So we want quick decisions, either shoot it or drive it or pass it, but don't hold on to it, and certainly don't dribble it on the spot. So you got 1 guy just dribbling the ball and 4 guys standing around. Shoot it, drive it, or pass it straight away. And the last key is reading the defense. By that I mean, say 1 here has the ball and he drives it. If X2 helps, being able to read that and pass it to 2. If X5 was to help, as 1 drove it, being able to read that and pass it to 5. If 3 was to help on 5, being able to read that and pass it to 3. So reading the help is the last key. Talk about the initial spacing. 1's got the ball, he wants to be as close to the middle as he possibly can. Sometimes we get a bit sloppy with that and 1 ends up out here. We want 1 as close to the middle as he can, and then 4's going to be out wide. If 1's on the split line, 4's going to be almost at the sideline. If 1 ends up more on the lane line, 4's going to adjust and be a bit further over. But ideally we've got 1 in the middle. 5 is always below the block and making his defender have to play pretty much under the backboard if possible. So the lower that he is, the better. And 2 and 3 are deep in the corners. Now a basic concept of penetration is when 1 drives the ball, or anyone drives the ball, but in this case 1, if he drives it to his right, we call that a lane drive or lane penetration. If he was to drive it left, then we call that a middle penetration, because he's driving it towards the middle. So on any drive, middle or lane, the following we need to have happen. First thing is we need the ball side corner filled, which in this case is 2. The second thing we need is the post to be opposite the ball, which we've got. The third thing we need is the opposite wing filled. And then the last thing we need is someone dragging behind, which is called the slide. In this case that will be 4. So those are our basic concepts on a middle drive or a lane drive. Ball side corner, post is opposite, weak side wing, and then 4 dragging behind. On any baseline drive, and the reason we'd have a baseline drive, if 1 was to pass it to 2, 2 drove a baseline. Or the second thing, if 1 was to stop in the drop zone, pass to a backdoor cutter, we treat that the same as a backdoor, as a baseline drive. A backdoor cutter is the same as a baseline drive. So on any baseline drive, the spots we need filled are baseline drift, which is the opposite corner. So on any baseline drive, we need the opposite corner filled. The post needs to lift up to the middle of the key. We always want someone coming behind as a safety valve. And then the last player, he'll just find the open window. That might be at the top, it might be at the 45, depends on the defense. It's really the other three that are the keys, and that's someone behind, the opposite corner, and he wants to be as close to the baseline as he can to make it an easy pass, and then the post sliding up towards the middle of the key. Now, one's got the ball at the top. When he drives it down the lane, we're talking about a lane drive here, the reads that he needs to make, once he gets below the free throw line, you're not going to pass it to 2. Generally, unless 2 helps all the way in, and you're passing it out to 2 for a wide open jump shot in the corner, you're not going to pass it to 2. If 2's sliding up, 2's going to be sliding up with him. It's a bad angle for a pass, and it usually ends up being a turnover. So the only time you pass it to 2 is if X2 actually stops you from getting to the ring. You pass it to 2 for a jump shot, that'll be the exception. Most teams he won't help, he'll be sort of staying with 2. So what you need to read as the point guard driving it there, or anyone driving it, you're reading X5 and you're reading X3. You would assume, if you beat your man, that X5 is going to help. And so what you're really reading is X3. So as 3 lifts up to fill our concepts of we need drive, we need the opposite wing filled. If X5 helps and X3 doesn't help on 5, you're going to be passing it to 5 and he's going to shoot a layup. If X5 helps and then 3 helps in on 5, then you'll be looking to skip it or blue, which is what a skip is called, to 3. If neither of them helped, obviously you'd go ahead and you'd shoot the layup. Or you'd throw it off the backboard. If you get it there and then 5 helps really late and it's a point guard and you don't want to get your shot blocked, just throw it high off the backboard, and our 5-man, who once you get below the free throw line, he moves into clean-up position, so he's facing the backboard. You could just throw it off the backboard and then he'll get it and he'll finish it off. So that's what you're reading. The last thing, if 5 and 3 both weren't open, maybe the defense did a good job of getting their hands in the passing lane, you weren't comfortable making the pass, the last thing you want to do is jump stop, and then as you drove it, 4's coming behind for the slide, so the last option is to jump stop, pivot, and then throw it back to 4. If you threw it back to 4 here, again you're going to get outside the 3-point line, you're always going to fill one of the corners, so sprint out to a corner, and then we got all the same concepts from here. If 4 drove it, 3 would be the slide, 1 would be the opposite wing lifting up, and everything's exactly the same. As 1 drives it, if he passes it to 3, so he does a skip pass to 3, 1 could fill either corner. There's no definite rule, but generally if 3 is looking to try and feed the post, and you see that 5 might be open in the post, 1 probably wants to fill out to the opposite corner. If 1 reads that probably the post isn't open, or that 3 is looking to drive it straight away, then he would want to fill the same side corner so it opens up a big gap for 3. So you could fill either corner, but generally if he's feeding the post, fill the opposite corner. If he's trying to drive it, fill his corner, and that way we get a lot more space. Now on a middle drive, so that was a lane drive, on a middle drive we're looking to get a pitch. So 1 drives the ball middle, 4 comes behind looking for the pitch. 1 will pass it to 4, and then we've got all the same stuff as I just talked about with the lane drive. After 1 pitches it to 4, 1 would take 4's place, and then everything's exactly the same. We've just got 1 and 4 exchanging positions. If 4 is not open on the pitch, 1 continues his drive, and we've got all of the same options. When 1 starts driving at middle, what 5 needs to do is start to relocate. So 5 is always going to relocate opposite the drive. So 1 is driving at left, So 5 needs to move to the opposite side of the basket. As 1 gets to about the split line, 5 should be on about the split line. So if 1 was to keep on driving left, 5 would relocate to the opposite side, 4 would have come behind for the pitch, and then once 1 gets below the free throw line and beats his man, he's getting into the paint. We've got all the same stuff. 2 is the opposite wing, he needs to lift up, 4 comes behind for the slide, and everything's exactly the same as normal. If 1 was to pitch it back to 4 on his drive to the middle, so 1 starts driving middle, 5 starts moving with him. If 1 was to pitch it back to 4, takes his place, 5 would recognize this and he would start sliding back to his original spot. It's important with the pitch that 4 starts high. You can see here if 4 starts pretty much in line with 1 or even ahead of him, then you're going to have one of 2 things happen. Either 4 is going to come too close to 1 and it ends up being a handoff, or if 4 manages to try and maintain that like 6 foot, 8 foot spacing, he'd have to catch it going this way, which is going away from the ring. So it's really important that 4 starts a lot higher than 1, so that when 1 drives at middle, 4 can keep his spacing from 1 and catch it going towards the ring. We want both of those things to happen. We want to keep them spaced about 6 feet from each other, and then we also want to catch it running downhill. If 1 was to pass it to 4 now, that would be a negative pass. As 4 gets here, that would be an even pass, and what we really want is a positive pass. Once 4 gets past 1, we want 1 to pass it now, and then he's catching it moving towards the basket. That's a positive pass. That's a lot harder to guard than a negative pass if 1 was to pass it, say, now. So we want positive passes. If you can't get to the ring, this is really important. If you can't get to the ring and you realize once you get around the sort of the 3-point line that you haven't beaten your man and you're not going to get all the way to the ring, you want to stop in the drop zone, preferably as high as possible. So I mean the drop zone area is around the elbow. You sort of let me draw around the edge of it with 1 here. That's a general idea of the drop zone on each side. The higher that you stop in that, you're going to have more success. If you stop here, it's going to be a lot better in terms of the spacing and the options than if you stop here. So the higher you can get, the better. When 1 stops in the drop zone, so he realized he couldn't beat his man, he stops there. It's now a 2-man game between 1 and 2. First thing that needs to happen is 5 sprints to the elbow, yelling for the ball, making a big distraction, trying to take X5 up with him. 2 is either going to drop or he's going to loop. A drop is a backdoor cut, and so he'll cut along the baseline looking at a pass from 1. Basically the reads are, if 2's defender is hugging him and playing him tight, you're going to take 1 step up, fake like you're going for a loop, and then cut backdoor. If your man maybe helped on the drive or he's playing up really high, you'd probably just cut in a straight line backdoor. And then if he's playing flat down towards the baseline, then you're going to come up for the loop. But it's important that you remember it's called the drop zone and not the loop zone, and we want drop as the first option. You're thinking drop every time. If that's clearly not open, then you're thinking about loop. But we want drops first. A drop is the first option. So 1 can't beat his man. What he's going to do is he's going to dribble, he's going to stride stop. In this case it'd be right foot then left foot, and he'd be right now facing that right sideline. 5 comes up to the elbow, yelling for the ball, and 2, if he drops, then we treat that, and 1 passes it to 2, we treat that like a baseline drive. So 3 would be opposite drift, 5 would want to be right in the middle of the key, 1 would want to be the safety man coming behind as 2 drives the baseline, and everything's the same as a baseline drive. If 2's not open and he sprints through and he's not open, 3 would lift up to give him somewhere to cut to. 1 would look to hit 5, and then 1 cuts to the ring looking for a give and go. Now if you're on the elbow, that's probably not going to be open. is where we talk about higher in the drop zone is better. The closer towards the baseline that you get, the less stuff is open. If you're out here, one passes to 5, now that give and go cut becomes an option. But regardless, one's going to cut hard to the ring, looking for the ball. If he doesn't get the ball, he continues his cut out to the corner, and then 5 is going to be looking to drive it right off the back of 1. So as 1 gets there, he's looking to drive it right off 1's back and try and get all the way to the ring. When 5 drives it there, we need to fill all of the spots that we talked about. So 5 is driving it to the right, so we need to fill the ball side corner. So basically when 5 drives it, everyone's going to be sprinting around the 3-point line. 5's driving it right, so 4 needs to fill the corner. We need someone filling the slide position, which is the 3, and then 2 would need to fill the wing position. If 5 was to kick it out, then we just play from there. So the other option in the drop zone is the loop. So 1's got the ball, 4's out top, 2 decides to do a loop. So the drop wasn't open, he decides to do a loop. So 2 is going to come up. What's really important here is that he comes up to almost where the free throw line meets the sideline, just 1 step inside of that. He comes up in a straight line, and then 1 passes it to him once he is either even with or even above 1. 1 passes him the ball as he's coming up. That's just like a dribble handoff. You're not going to get anything off that. You keep the ball moving, but we won't get any layups. 2 must come up. 1 must be patient and not give 2 the ball till he's above him, or at least even with him. And then we want to pass it. It'll be about a 6 foot, 8 foot pitch. And then 1 will always take 2's place on a loop. And then 2's going to be looking to drive it. So he'll catch it going towards the ring. When 2 catches it there, 5's going to realise that, and he'll dive right across the lane. That's going to clear out a big driving lane for 2 to drive the ball to the left, trying to finish on the left side of the ring. As 2 drives it, obviously 4 is the other guard, so he'd need to pitch. As 2 drives it, we need to fill our spots, which is weak side wing, ball side corner, opposite post, and someone sliding in behind. Now we'll talk about passing and cutting. The offense starts in a 2-guard front. There's 1 and 4, which is a 2-guard front. What we do want though is we want a 1-guard front as often as we possibly can, so that we have a triple gap. So to start the offense, we either want 1 to pass to 4 and cut through, so we've got a triple gap for 4, or we want 4 to cut through and open up a triple gap for 1. And there's a number of ways we can do that. The first option we can do is that we can pass fake at 4. So if 1's holding the ball in triple threat, he can pass fake at 4, and that tells 4 that he's meant to back cut. If 1's dribbling the ball, then the other thing he can do is he can back up dribble. If he takes a back up dribble, that signals 4 that he's supposed to cut through, and then 1 will be looking to drive it. And then, like I said, the other option would be for 1 to actually pass it to 4 and then cut through. So our general rules with cutting: if you're one of the 2 guards, and by rule the 2 guards, the 2 wings are the players closest to the baseline, the 2 guards are the other 2 players. So even if our spacing was like this, 2 and 3 are still the wings, they're closest to the baseline. 1 and 4 are still the guards. If our spacing was like this, 1 and 4 are still the guards, 2 and 3 are still the wings. It doesn't matter where we are on the court, but the 2 players closest to the baseline are the wings, the 2 other players are the guards. If you're a guard and you pass the ball, you're always going to cut hard, either a through cut or a brush cut. A through cut means you're going to cut hard to the ring, looking for the ball. It's not just a cut to occupy people, this is actually a cut where you are trying to score, trying to get the ball back for a give and go cut. If you don't get the ball, you're going to fill out to the side that the ball is on. That opens up a triple gap. If you were to fill out to the opposite side, now one only has a double gap each way. So pass and cut and fill out to the same side as the ball so that he's got a big triple gap to drive it. The brush cut you can do looks like this. 4 passes to 1. He cuts just in front of 1, basically runs into 1's defender with his hands up like he doesn't know what's going on, and then takes 1's place and 1 drives it. So that's more like an exchange. If you're a wing and you pass the ball, so if for whatever reason 2 has the ball here, maybe he's looking to feed the post, and then he passes it back to 4, if you're a wing and you pass the ball, you then drop down to the corner to give 4 a lot more space. What I would like to see happen, and we haven't practiced this but we will, is anytime the wing passes the ball to the guard and drops down to the corner, I want to automatically see the other guard cut through without any signals, and that instantly gives 4 a triple gap. So on any wing to guard pass, we want to see the opposite guard cut through, open up a triple gap, and that'd be even if it was a skip pass. If 2 was to throw a skip pass to 1, I would like to see 4 cut through, open up a triple gap for 1 to drive the ball. Basically though, we want to keep the ball in the middle of the floor. There's no point in passing the ball to the corner unless we're trying to feed the post. And that's usually going to be on a skip pass. So you don't want to just for no reason dribble here and then pass to the corner. When the ball's on one side of the court, you're basically playing 3-on-5 because you've got split line. If the ball's on there, you're playing 3-on-5, or in this case, because we've got the post on the weak side, 2-on-5. Whereas if the ball's in the middle of the court, all of a sudden there's no weak side help because everybody's 1 pass away. So we want to keep the ball towards the middle as much as we can, and we don't want to pass it to the corner just by choice. The one time we might pass it to one of the corner guys might be on a skip pass if we're trying to feed the post. If one was to skip it to 3 and then 3 to look to pass it into the post, that might be the exception. A couple of rules for the post player. First thing, number 1, he always wants to face the ball. So he's going to be below the block, but he's going to have his shoulders facing the ball so he can always see what's going on, and he's reacting to the ball. Second thing, whenever you catch the ball, you want to try and catch it facing the ring. So you're going to be facing the ball. As one gets below the free throw line, you go to clean up position, which is facing the ring. So then when one passes you the ball, you can just catch it and finish as quickly as possible, trying to catch it high, keep it high, and then finish it high without ever bringing the ball down. And you got to get a ton of weak side rebounds. Always on the weak side, so you're always in clean-up position. If one passes to 2, you're in perfect rebounding position. If one drives it and shoots a layup, you're in perfect rebounding position. Now the opportunities for post-ups. Anytime there's a skip pass, that's the best opportunity for us to post up. If one drives it, 5 is generally going to be helping. Even if he doesn't help all the way, if one hasn't completely beaten his man, 5, I guarantee you, is at least going to take a step over to be ready to help. So on the skip pass, if one was to skip it to 3 here, it's a great opportunity for 5 to run at X5 and seal him almost under the ring probably for a throw-in pass, and then not even a post-up, but just a layup. So on any skip pass, we're looking at post-up. And I mean, even if one's got the ball here, and we want to skip it to 3, again, that's a great opportunity for 5 to, while the ball's in the air, go at X5 and pin him under the ring and get a really deep post-up. So skip passes are number 1 opportunity for post-ups with this offense. And then the other opportunity is just simply if the player with the ball makes eye contact with the post. So if one's got the ball here and he sees that 5 is playing a little bit below, X5 is playing a little bit below 5, he might just make eye contact with 5, and that's going to tell 5 to duck in and post up. So skip passes or eye contact from the ball handler are the 2 post-up opportunities. Now these last little thing I want to talk about are just the little things that make this offense go from just sort of being average or being decent to being fantastic. And these are the little things or the details. The first thing is being patient. Being patient. When one drives it at 2 not moving until 1 picks up the ball. Once 1 picks up the ball in the drop zone, that's when 2 moves. Now every now and then, if his man helps all the way up, he might back up straight away. But if he's going to loop, he definitely wants to wait until 1 picks up the ball. Not sort of sneaking up, and then when 1 picks up the ball, he's already halfway there. Being patient, holding your spacing. And then if we're using this example of a loop, what will generally happen is as 1 drives it here and 2 loops, 4 will usually, if he's not being patient, he'll start creeping over here, anticipating getting ready for the pitch from 2. Getting ready for that pitch from 2. But what happens is 4's defender becomes all the way over there, and therefore we don't get anything because there's no space. So it's so important that 4 stays all the way over there. He's patient. 2 is patient. 2 drives it. 4 still being patient. 4 still being patient. He's still being patient. And then he sprints, as opposed to just sort of creeping over there a little bit at a time and then screwing up our spacing. The second thing with being patient is just the concept of how we pass and cut, but then we don't fill. You know, often motion offense, you cut and then people fill the spots that get left open. By that I mean, if 1's got the ball here, 1 passes to 4, 1 cuts through. Traditional motion offense would be 2 fills the spot that 1 left. That's not what we're doing. We pass and cut and then we hold. Pass and cut and hold. Hold for at least 2 seconds. I'm saying probably 3. But if the person still hasn't driven the ball in 2 seconds, then you're going to fill the spot. But when someone passes, hold the spacing, be patient, give the person with the ball an opportunity to drive the gap that just got opened up. Okay, every time we pass and cut, we open up a gap, and we want to drive that gap. So 1 passes to 4, cuts through, 2 needs to be patient. It's not going to start creeping up a little bit. He's going to stay deep in the corner and be patient. 4 picked up the ball, then he would either loop or drop, but he would be patient. That's so important. Another thing that makes this offense great instead of good is just those positive passes. If it's a loop, making sure the player's above you so they catch it going towards the ring, and we're not just running dribble handoffs. You know, dribble handoffs are good to keep the ball moving, but you generally don't get anything attacking off them. I'm talking about a pitch. A positive pitch would be now. A negative pitch would be here. An even pitch would be there. A positive pitch would be there. So those are really important that we're making positive passes. And the last type of, I guess, positive or negative pass is when someone cuts backdoor. The earlier you can get them the ball on a backdoor cut, the more success you're going to have. If you only can get them the ball when they're there, usually there's going to be defenders there and they might travel, they might charge into someone, or they might end up throwing up an off-balance shot. If you can get them the ball as early as possible, maybe when they're 1 step inside the 3, then it gives them time to read the defense and make a good decision. So a positive pass to a backdoor cutter is making the pass as early as possible. Another thing that makes it special, staying outside the 3-point line and not creeping in towards that sort of 17-foot range, but staying on the NBA 3 and only going inside the 3-point line if you know you have a back cut to the ring or if you're driving the ball. But otherwise, spreading out, and when you go inside the 3-point line, for whatever reason, if you pass and cut, if you drive it and then kick, you need to sprint out of there as fast as you can so that at almost all times we've only got the 5 man in the key. Last 2 things, again, things that make the offense a lot better. We want to avoid negative steps. Negative steps. Negative steps would be if I was to drive it here and then throw the ball to 4 and then just back up like this. or if I was to drive it and throw the ball to 3 and then just back up, because what that does is it doesn't open a gap. It doesn't open a gap, it closes up a gap. Whereas if I passed it to 3 and then go through, I've opened up a gap for 3. So basically, any time that you go inside the paint, either with the ball or without the ball, you're going to fill to one of the corners. You are always going to fill to one of the corners. That's about the most simple way to explain the passing and cutting. When you pass and cut, or you drive it and you kick, you are always going to fill a corner. The one exception is if you do a pitch. The one exception is if you do a pitch. You drive it middle, you pitch it, and you get out of the way. Now that's not really negative steps. Negative steps in that case, if you did a pitch, would be backing out that way and taking away his gap. So because you're opening up a gap for him, it's still a triple gap, it's all good. So the one exception is a pitch. Otherwise, when you go inside the 3-point line, you get out to a corner. And the very last little detail is do not want to make ever a negative pass in terms of the person moving away from the ring. So another type of negative pass is, say 3's got the ball, for whatever reason 2 was coming away from the ring, and if 3 passed him the ball there while he's still moving away from the ring and inside the 3-point line, number one, we're only going to get a mid-range shot when we can get a whole point more just by being an extra 2 feet back. And secondly, his momentum's going away from the ring, so it's not very attacking, and it's usually just going to end up with the defender right on us and never going to really create anything. So we never want to make a pass to someone moving away from the ring while they're still inside the 3-point line.